The format for the evening is we'll have a very, very few introductory remarks from each of our speakers, from Better Together and from US Scotland. We then have had questions in from you, for which many thanks. 3 of those have been selected by the university. I'll put those to the panellists, but I want you to chip in, please, during those discussions. There'll be a debate on the economy, there'll be a debate on Europe, and then there'll be a debate on debates, or the lack of it in the case of the Prime Minister. So that's the question we'll be taking. And then, that'll go for quite a bit, probably the bulk of the evening. And then each of the panellists will have a chance to cross-interrogate the other, to pose a question, a key question if you like, to the other. We might have time then for a few more audience contributions, and then we'll wrap up at about 7:15 or thereabouts. I think try and keep it really close to time, because I know we've got many other things to go on to. So, no further ado, no further nonsense from me. Let's hear the introductory speakers, and would you join me first in welcoming Blair McDougall, please. Blair.
I don't want to talk for too long because, as Brian said, we're here to answer your questions. But the one question I would like to answer tonight, and given that we have not only, I think, the referee for this, but the referee for Scottish politics, it would be good to settle for once and for all how you tell two Blairs apart when asking questions in a public meeting. We've had yes Blair, better Blair, and less flattering distinctions made between the two of us. I'll just thank the university for hosting this, but to say that I'm a bit disappointed because when I agreed to do this debate, I was promised that it was going to be billed as the Which Blair project, and I thought it was too good a pun and not to air, so there we are. Look, so much, Blair James and I share a Christian name, but I think we also share something else, which is a passion and belief that Scotland can be a fairer and more prosperous country, and I think that's where everybody starts from in this debate. Whether you are yes, no, or undecided in this room, the fact that there are over 400 people in a room in Dundee on October 9th here to debate Scotland's future should give us great hope for the future. But so much of this debate, although it's passionate, seems like it's black and white. And I guess our primary argument in this debate is that we don't have to make a decision between two binary situations. We do not have to make a decision between things as they are and things as they could be. We can have, as we always say, the best of both worlds. We can be distinctively Scottish and successfully Scottish within the United Kingdom. We can continue the success of devolution without losing those things which we do well together as part of something bigger. To give two examples of that, one an example of human resource and one an example of natural resource. In human resource, in universities like this, especially universities like Dundee, Scots, as they always have done, are the innovators and the inventors for the rest of the United Kingdom. They invest in us, and places like Dundee, full of researchers, providing the cures and treatments to the UK NHS. We'd both be poorer if we went our separate ways and lost that funding, and if they lost that ingenuity and innovation. And an example in terms of natural resources, the debate at the moment about energy prices. At the moment, the huge green investment going on all the way across Scotland, underpinned by the energy bills of 26 million households across the United Kingdom. They invest in our energy, green energy revolution. We benefit from the jobs. But this isn't just about self-interest. I think that a lot of undecided voters will make up their mind on the basis of pragmatism, on the basis of what it means for them in their pocket. But I think those arguments of self-interest, those arguments about the things that we can do well as a small nation, making our own decisions, while still being part of a bigger nation with the strength of that, can't be so easily separated from those arguments of identity and solidarity. I'm proud to represent a campaign which says that solidarity and compassion doesn't stop at the border. I'm proud to feel part of something bigger. For me, it's not about flags, it's not about flag waving, it's about family, and it's about shared endeavour. And I think those amazing things that we've achieved together, whether it's the establishment of the NHS by a Welshman, the establishment of the welfare state by an Englishman, or the establishment of things like the national minimum wage by a Scotsman, I think these things are incredible things that we've done together. And I think working together with the best of both worlds, with decision-making here in Scotland, without losing the best things about being part of something better, offers us the best of both worlds and the best chance of that fairer and more prosperous future for Scotland.
Well, people, thank you very much indeed. Round of applause for the other Blair Jenkins from Yes Scotland.
what the independence debate is really about is what kind of country do you want to live in, what kind of society do you want to live in, what do you really care about, what's most important to you. And I think that's the process that everybody's going through in Scotland. And it's a process I would ask you to go through, not just tonight, but in the coming months as we move towards the referendum. What do you feel strongly about? What are you passionate about? What kind of Scotland do you want for yourself, your family, your friends, your community? Because I think it's that process that honestly takes people towards a yes position and a decision to vote yes next year. And I think if we go through that process of honestly asking ourselves, which outcome next year, a yes vote or a no vote, which is the outcome that's most likely to give you the kind of Scotland you want, the kind of country you want to be part of, then I think that's what leads people towards a yes. So I'll talk about the three main compelling reasons that constitute the yes case. They're based on democracy, they're based on prosperity, and they're based on fairness. Now, only with a yes vote will Scotland always get the government it votes for. And that means we don't get policies imposed on us by governments we didn't vote for, things like the poll tax and the bedroom tax. Now, we know that Scotland can be a very prosperous independent nation. If we were an independent country right now, today, we would be in the top 10 of the world economies in terms of wealth per head of population. But what independence allows us to do is to use that wealth for the majority of our people, to make it work for Scotland, so that we're not just a rich country, we're also a rich society. So it's only with that yes vote, only with a yes vote, do we get the opportunity to create a fairer Scotland, a country where we look out for one another and where social justice is much higher up the social agenda, much higher up the political agenda than it has been. It gives us a chance to move away from the direction of travel of the UK under successive governments, where we've ended up being the fourth most unequal country in the developed world, and according to the experts who do these sums, well on our way to becoming the most unequal country in the developed world. I don't believe that's the direction of travel that the people of Scotland want. So we know that Scotland has got what it takes. We know we have the evidence to show that we can be a successful, prosperous, independent country. So what we need next year is just the courage and the confidence to make that decision. I am absolutely certain that Scotland will make that decision. Thank you very much.
About those excellent opening addresses, setting the scene to some extent. We're going to drill down now with questions from the audience, and I stress at this point, after I've asked the panel some to give their opening response to those, very keen to get views from the audience, but we can stick to each of the topics if we can. So that's the economy, then Europe, and then the issue of what the nature of the debate. The first question, which I'll read, is from John McCaffrey. John, is John here tonight, any chance? John, thanks for your question, sir. It is, do you think that independent Scotland could offer the same or better standard of living in the future instead of remaining part of the UK? Very key economic question. So Blair Jenkins first on that, on standard of living for people living in Scotland.
Well, the starting position for looking ahead and thinking what kind of future should we have in an independent country has to be the evidence that we have from recent years, evidence going back over 30 years. We know right now that if Scotland were an independent country, rather than having the legacy of debt that we have as being part of the UK, an independent Scotland would be in a position of having surplus funds. Now, the Fiscal Commission group that did work for the Scottish Government on this, you'll know the Nobel Prize-winning economists on it, estimated that an independent Scotland over the last 30 years would have accumulated surplus funds. We would have a saving surplus of somewhere between £80 billion and £116 billion, as opposed to our share of the huge UK debt, which is estimated on a population basis of being about £90 billion. So the history shows that Scotland has a very strong economy. You know right now, over a 30-year period, we've paid more in taxes per head of population than the rest of the UK. So we start from that very, very strong base. We have a strong economy, we have a diversified economy, we have very exciting new industries which offer us very strong prospects for the future. It's absolutely true that as an independent country, as with the UK, the strength of your economy and the future prosperity depends on the wisdom of the decisions that we make. So either side in this campaign, looking ahead, you can project certain trends, you can project certain numbers, and you can predict things going forward. But in the end, the future of Scotland as an independent country will be what we make of it. You know, in terms of prosperity, in terms of fairness, in terms of everything else. It will be our job to make sure that we are a successful country.
But Blair, isn't that historical advantage you're proclaiming there founded upon oil? And the projections are that oil will decline in the period up to 2017.
Well, it's true that some of it is founded in oil, and we are one of the few campaigns that doesn't think oil is a problem. I'm from the northeast of Scotland. A lot of my friends went into the oil industry. I'm sure that's true of people in Dundee. Yeah, a lot of my pals went into the oil industry and now working right around the world, helping develop new fields. If you talk to people in the industry, the one thing they will tell you is that the oil is going to be coming out of the North Sea for an awfully long time. I mean, 40 years was the minimum estimate. People in the industry are now talking about 50 years. And the friends I have in the industry who are in charge of operations in places like the Falklands say that the oil in the North Sea is becoming more and more recoverable all the time. So the volume of oil to recover will increase. People talk about price volatility. Yeah, there is volatility in oil prices, but essentially the trend is upwards. There's volatility within an upward trend, and that's been a trend for many years.
Let's bring in Blair McDougall on this question again. John's question: could an independent Scotland offer the same or better standard of living in the future by comparison to the UK?
Well, I think people like myself, if we thought that it would be a better standard of living and more prosperity than an independent country, I'd be sat where Blair Jenkins is rather than I was. In my opening remarks, I made the point about things that we gain from being part of something bigger that underpin our economy, whether it is our expertise in science and research, whether it's the growth in green energy, or whether it is on things like oil, where as the fields begin to decline in the North Sea over the next 30 years, it's surely better to have the £20 billion decommissioning costs spread over the shoulders of 60 million people than to have it spread over the shoulders of 5 million people. But the interesting thing with what Blair just said is that it's completely and totally at odds with what the public figures offered by the Scottish Government say, with what we know Scottish ministers say in private, and what independent experts said just earlier this week. And I had hoped and I had thought that in recent weeks the debate on the economic future of an independent Scotland had shifted into the realms of economic fact rather than fiction and fantasy. But for Blair to say that we run surpluses just is not borne out by any factual analysis of the situation at all. We currently run a net fiscal deficit. John Swinney, in his leaked paper,
you accept you accept it is lower than for the
but in John Swinney's leaked document, he said that Scotland's net fiscal deficit will be higher than that of the UK under independence. And this is a question about what we do with independence. This is not my words, these are John Swinney's words. Now, if supporters of independence said, look, we will face very distinct challenges in terms of making the sums add up under independence, there'll be difficult decisions, but here's how we'll deal with them. I think a lot of people would listen to them. But the more and more we hear things like, well, oil will be worth £300,000 for every man, woman and child and stuff like that, I think people start to think that it's fantasy.
Blair Jenkins.
Well, I think the data is there over a 30-year period that Scotland's finances are stronger than the UK's now. Scotland were an independent country. Currently we'd be running an annual deficit, an annual budget deficit, as is every other Western economy. 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years of being in deficit does not demonstrate the long-term trend of the country.
We've been in deficit every year for the last 10 years.
Figures over 30 years demonstrate that an independent Scotland would have been in surplus, very comfortably in surplus. We would not have the accrued deficit of the UK. But there's a broader point here. I think the question was intended to elicit a broader response than just a bunch of numbers. So what I would say is this: I think the price of staying in the UK is too high. I believe that if you look at the cost to us to stay in the UK in terms of gross and growing inequality, in terms of wasting many, many more billions of pounds on weapons of mass destruction and decline, in terms of child poverty, growing child poverty, and growing fuel poverty, in terms of the assault on living standards and benefits, the price of staying in the UK is a price we can no longer afford.
Do you accept, Blair, that the Institute for Fiscal Study, which is one of the reports that Blair was referring to, said that the advantage of North Sea oil would be outweighed over a period by the loss of the consequentials from Barnet? It couldn't make up the gap.
Well, I think the point about Barnet is we still, the UK and Scotland both have to run currently with a budget deficit. And there is the issue about borrowing to fund that deficit. But an independent Scotland, a starting position, and looking ahead at the next few years, as I said, would be a small fiscal loss. Taking a long-term future of the country, our economy in Scotland is a healthier economy than the UK's as a whole, and there's evidence from other small European countries to demonstrate that that would be
And
likely to
some of that then McDougall is predicated upon growth. Do you not give any account to the prospect that a small country might be able to be more dynamic in the economy? This is the argument made by yes.
Well, the argument for Scotland being different cannot be made on the basis that it will happen just because we're independent. It will happen because of the policy. So people are often keen to talk about Denmark and Norway as an example in this debate. Well, Denmark and Norway don't have different outcomes from us because they're independent. They have different outcomes from us because of decisions they take on extremely high levels of taxation, for example. But we've got to start this debate on the basis of policy and on the basis of detail. The paper, which was suppressed by John Swinney until it was forced out by a Freedom of Information request that he fought for over a year.
Suppressed?
It was suppressed. It was talking about the Freedom of Information request, which we published about 2 weeks ago. It was refused twice in response to journalists who put in the Freedom of Information request. It was then appealed to the Information Commissioner, and only then was it published. And why was that? Because in it said that in each of the last 21 years, bar 1 year, we have run a net fiscal deficit. Now that's not extraordinary. That's not extraordinary. But for people on the yes side to claim that there are surpluses is taking a huge gamble.
There is a reason why there's a lot of you get a lot of misinformation about Scandinavian countries. There's lots we can learn from Scandinavian countries. I mean, they not only have the most successful economies in Europe, they top every league table in terms of prosperity, they also have the best outcomes in terms of health and education and other things. The quotes on tax figures are highly misleading. The figure that's given in Sweden, for example, the figure that's given for the tax rate in Sweden is a figure that includes their national insurance. It's a compound figure. They put income tax and national insurance together. What they call the effective tax rate, which is the rate of tax you actually pay when you put income tax and national insurance together. The effective tax rate on an income of $100,000, that's the international comparison to do. In Sweden it's 36%, in the UK it's 32%. Now, there is a difference. It is higher in Sweden, but has anyone been to Sweden? Have you seen the quality of their public services? Have you seen how much better they live? Have you seen how much stronger their economy is?
Very briefly, there we go out to the audience for questions.
Let's just be clear of this. Blair says this a lot. The only tax policy we have from the government, Scottish government at the moment, in terms of the proposition we will be voting for, the proposition we'll be voting for at the referendum, is the corporation tax will be cut by 3% more than whatever the UK level is, regardless of what the UK level is. So we can talk about higher levels of Scandinavian taxation, but we're not being offered that. We're being offered Reaganomics at the moment.
Thanks for that. Let's go out to the audience. Let's take some points. And there in the third row. And then there.
Hello, good evening.
Hi.
I looked at your website today there, and the front page, Blair Jenkins, and the front page said, quote, Scotland more than pays its way. The average tax generated per person in the UK for 2010-2011 was £9,000, and in Scotland it's 10,700. Now that suggests to me that Scotland is prospering in the UK. So you need to explain why you would want to jeopardise that by breaking up a long-standing, well-integrated, established currency union, when Alex Salmond has said it is in the overwhelming interests of the people of Scotland and the people of the rest of the UK, that is the British people, to come into agreement with a currency union, which is of course what happened 300 years ago. Now, you need to explain. My question is, you need to explain how one central bank can set monetary policy for two diverging economies, which is what is going to happen.
Hang on to that thought, folks. Over there, if you can take the mic. We'll put your hand again, please. That's right.
What more I would like to ask is that, in your opening statement you said that your solidarity doesn't end at the border. You then subsequently said that if you felt that Scotland would be a more prosperous nation, you'd sit with Blair Jenkins. That to me seems very contradictory. Which is it?
Oh, hang on. Please. There's a hand raised. Wait. Look, here's you, very quick. Sorry, forgive me, getting you screwing up. You had it again, please, so the mic.
I just want to say two things. I
RBS and HBOS.
Very much indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So we have a ripple of applause greeted the question. We have currency, we have the apparent contradiction in the Better Together camp, and we have the banking crisis. Currency question, was it Jenkins? Was it
well, can I deal with the first part of the question first? You said why, given that the Scottish economy is so successful, why do you want to power as an independent country? Well, one answer to that is...
Why do you want to break
no. Well, one of the reasons we want to... One of the reasons we want to have an independent country is, although we're a wealthy country, the wealth is not distributed well in Scotland. We have the lowest life expectancies of any country in Western or Central Europe. We have dreadful levels and growing levels of child poverty. So there are lots of reasons why the policies that are inflicted on us at a UK level are not the policies that the people of Scotland want. We need to make our own political decisions. This is about where political decision making is located. On the currency point, on the currency point, it makes perfect sense, and lots of economists based south of the border who have no great enthusiasm for the notion of Scottish independence have said that if Scotland becomes independent, it makes sense for all parts of these islands to maintain the currency union. Alistair Darling has said it would be logical and desirable for Scotland and the rest of the UK to maintain a sterling zone, to maintain a currency union, if we become an independent country. Well, I will answer the point. They're not the Irish economy. It's the Scottish economy. GDP per head in Scotland, if you exclude oil entirely, is 99% of the UK. So you've got two highly converged economies. The rest of the UK is Scotland's biggest trading partner. Scotland is the rest of the UK's second biggest trading partner. So it does make sense, it makes practical sense to maintain a currency union.
Do you accept, Mr. Jenkins, on the question of the currency union, that our UK, the Bank of England, would have a position to adopt on that? It could be the case that Scotland would simply say, that is it, we're having a currency union. You would have to negotiate with
a formal currency union would require both halves of the UK to agree on that, but that's absolutely true. But there's a difference between political posturing before a referendum and self-interest which applies after a referendum. You will note, and it's a very important point, people in the UK government are very careful not to rule out currency union. They talk against it, but it will be different after a yes vote.
On the currency question and the suggestion of contradiction in your stance.
On the currency question, I think it's important to understand why it is that people in the UK do not currently rule it out. UK ministers are not going to fall into the trap of acting against Scotland until Scotland decides to leave. It's a trap that they are very wise not to fall into. But look, the whole currency, there's nothing more fundamental than what currency you use. And the whole position of the SNP, not against Scotland, is based on the idea that the currency, the rejection of the currency union by the Shadow Chancellor, by the Chancellor and by the First Minister of Wales and lots of other UK figures is a bluff. Okay? If it isn't, the SNP position is now that we use the pound on an informal basis. So the way that Montenegro uses the euro without formal agreement, or Paraguay uses the dollar. Let's be clear what that means. That means no lending of last resort. It means nobody standing behind our mortgages, our jobs, our businesses. Okay? And recent history suggests
to be fair, I think what the SNP have said is not that. I think what
they have. Hank Shortson said that 2 weeks ago.
It was me at the end of the interview, like Shortson. What the SNP position is to say is we could use the currency anyway, therefore it would be in the interests of the UK to operate a currency union rather than have this maverick on its board. Do you accept that there would be a pre-independence position and a post-independence position?
No.
The Chancellor is saying now in January.
Honestly, when I speak to people in the rest of the UK, they are not playing this up. They are playing this down. Honestly. Look, this isn't something. Look, there is at least a possibility, even though Sergeant Nationalists could accept it, that the rest of the UK could say no. There's no current legal framework for sharing a currency. You need to establish a eurozone style situation.
How would it be in the interests of the rest of the UK to say no?
Well, nobody would suggest that the UK at the moment should join the euro without considering the economic risks, without considering what the impact of sovereignty for the UK. I think there are huge questions as to whether the rest of the UK would accept that. And also let's remember that the premise behind that is that with us having just walked away from the UK, we would then be asking the UK to sign up to a situation where they would need to sign off their budget with us, we would need to sign off our budget with them, where we would be sharing risk without sharing a fiscal union. I just think it's highly doubtful.
Blair Jenkins, very briefly on that, what do you want on the banks?
Well, as I say, I think the difference after independence, yes, would be very, very considerable. It makes sense for both countries. Why, if you're the government of the rest of the UK, why would you impose on your entire industrial and business infrastructure currency exchange costs that the second biggest trading partner you have? It doesn't make any sense. I think pragmatism would prevail. The difference between what you say is pre-referendum and post-referendum.
But we do go on the question about the banks, the RBS. Yeah. Really said, it took me to say RBS and HPOS. How relevant is Germany? Do you think that is?
Well, it's germane to the point I said. So the position of the SNP is to at least have an option on the table, sterlingisation, so no lender of last resort. They've also referred to the Isle of Man as a potential model for how they would do it. Cyprus, when it went into its own banking crisis, had banking assets which were about 7 times the size of its economy. Ireland and Iceland had banking assets in the various crisis that were about 9 times the size of their GDP. Scotland currently has 12.5 times our own GDP in banking assets. These issues of who stands behind our banks and who stands behind our economy are not things that we can be so loose with that, hey, we'll just see what happens. We need to know what the plan is for function
I think the much related. The
debate tonight is better together and yes, Scotland. But if you'll forgive me, the SNP are slightly Germany into this.
I'll move on to the bank.
As the governing party.
I'll move on to the bank point. But just one thing you put on the country point. The Eurozone's got into difficulty because there are vastly different economies contained within the Eurozone. The thing that went wrong with the Eurozone did not apply to the sterling zone. It's a very false comparison people make. Moving on to the banks, very good. I always think, and Blair and I got on very well, I always think it's one of the biggest bits of brass neck effrontery of the No campaign is to use the banking crisis as an argument for the benefits of the UK. Let's just briefly recap, because I hear some of the guys. I hear people like Arthur Darling, standing up saying, well, I want to take credit for launching some of the lifeboats. What I never hear them say is, I was the guy on the bridge when the ship hit the rocks. I was asleep at the wheel, and that's what happened. The people of Scotland entrusted financial regulation, entrusted the monitoring and supervision of the banks to the UK government and the UK financial regulator. They let us down very badly and brought the economy to the brink of collapse because the banking sector was poorly regulated. I'm going to move on now. There's a very important point, because the very important point I must make. The biggest contribution to the bailout of the banks in the UK was made by the US Federal Reserve, which gave to the British banks 10 times as much as the UK government contributed to bailing out.
Mr. McDougall on that, and then two more questions from the audience on the economy, please. Mr. McDougall on this one.
If all that he's just said is true about how the UK is so terrible at regulating our banks, why has he just argued for a position which would leave the regulation of financial services with the
the issue whether you have the issue whether you have a common financial service regulator is an important question, but it's not necessarily linked to the currency point. These are different things.
John Swinney wants to have the Bank of England continue to be the regulator of Scottish banks. Yeah. If the poor regulation of banks by the UK is an argument for independence,
historically that was true.
Let's get a couple more questions on the economy. A couple more questions on the economy, and then I'm going to move on to the next major topic. There, please. There's another hand. Yeah, over here. That's it.
You were talking comparing, obviously, the banks in Iceland and the banks in Cyprus, the banks in Scotland, obviously the Irish banks in crisis as well. Is that not because of the way they face the economy, though? consumption in Scotland, but we have a stable economy, and whether you don't see people do that.
So that's policy choices rather than structures.
Yeah. Whereas in a country like Ireland, the majority is infrastructure is based in agriculture, and that's not a part of it.
Thanks for that. Let's get the other questions from we over there. We can hand them against so that the mic can come. Doing the Brazilian and be fit enough to play the Dundee night after the Actually, given that he was sent off and booked last night, you might get a game. Not bitter by any means.
Can I just say, first of all, I'm a wee bit confused by Blair McDougall. He tells us under the Union we've been in deficit for the past 10 years, for each of the past 10 years. And I'm not sure whether that's an argument for staying in. Also, Denmark and Sweden said do well because we make our own decisions. Well, what I want to ask you, and you made the point, Brian, that the SNP is germane to this argument. So is the position of every other party who will have a place. Why do they keep quiet? Why do they not share with us their post-independence plans? And they just keep quiet long
Thanks very much for that. Blair McDougall for us. Two questions there. The banking issue was about policy, not structure, and will you disclose your post-vote plans on what might happen in Scotland?
Yep.
Particularly in the boundary economy.
So on the banking point, the point I was making about Cyprus and Ireland and Iceland compared to Scotland was that risk that Scotland has, which compared to those other countries in terms of GDP and banking assets, is extraordinarily large, wasn't as big a risk for us because we were connected to a bigger economy. It's the point I made at the beginning about one of our specialisms, 200,000 financial services jobs in Scotland, selling mortgages, savings, pensions to the rest of the UK, is underpinned by that seamless access to the UK financial services market, where 9 out of 10 of the customers that sustain the 200,000 jobs are there. But we were, in economic terms, more exposed, but we weren't because we were part of something bigger. On post-independence plans, I mean,
it's almost part two of John's question, which was the remaining part of the UK. What would happen to the economy in those circumstances? And Nicola Sturgeon at the party conference, SNP party's conference, suggested that the UK ministers were itching to cut Scotland's public spending. What do you think of that?
Well, they have always said that, and they will always say that. It's the basis of their argument. Look, there's two separate things here. There's one, what will the pro-UK parties do in terms of additional powers? Now, there's the constant argument that you cannot trust people who are pro-devolution to deliver more devolution. It wasn't true when it was argued before 1997 when Alex Salmond said he would trust Labour to deliver a pizza at home in Scottish Parliament. I'm not sure what Alex Salmond does for a living now. I'm pretty sure there's a Scottish Parliament. We said it before Calman, we got more powers then as well. So all three parties are going to set out their proposals for how we will individually. That will come before the referendum. Plenty of time. Well, you'll get it before the referendum, don't worry. The second part of this though is policy change. And I sort of taking off my better going to have to put on my Labour Party hat. Questions about what will happen to the economy. I'm quite proud that Ed Miliband at the moment, in contrast to the SNP position, for example, says that energy prices should be cut from eating into the profits and the profiteering of energy companies, not from coming out of our tax packets. So there is a debate about change more generally, about what happens both in the UK and also what happens with the powers of the Scottish Parliament.
You say there will be no cuts in the spending levels available to Scotland, no cut in the Barnett formula that's consequential.
The Barnett formula has been here for 30 40 years, it's going to be here for 30 40 years as far as I'm
I think we've now moved on to what happens if we were to make the very regrettable mistake of which I don't believe will happen, but what's the consequence, what follows from that? Well, there certainly are consequences coming down the road. Lots of figures in the UK parties have said more or less in terms that the Barnett formula would be scrapped, amended. There would be a day of reckoning for Scotland if we were to vote no. So I think we have to bear that very heavily in mind. In terms of the direction of travel, which has been consistent now for 30 years in the UK, as I said earlier, towards a more and more unfair and unequal society. 80% of the jobs created in the UK in the last 5 years have been low-wage jobs. This is a low-wage economy. Almost all the benefits that have accrued to this society in recent years have been to the top 1 or 2%. we're becoming an ever more unsustainably unequal society. I mentioned Scandinavian countries. It is absolutely possible, and indeed much more desirable, to have a successful economy which is also a fair society, which is also a fair economy. There's one last brief thing I want to say about the banks, because it's worth bearing in mind of it. Where you have your headquarters has nothing to do with who picked up the burden for the bailout, and that wasn't the standard that was applied internationally. The bailout was done according to where you traded. 80% of the RBS losses were in the City of London. The City of London culture at that time was one of high risk, it was one of negligence, it was one of being highly speculative with money, it was one of not understanding what their assets consisted of. There's been a lot written about what was wrong with the banking system, but the root of that was in the City of London. And two Scottish banks, which were nominally Scottish, were part of that problem.
Thanks very much. Next topic question, Jim Pickett. Jim, thanks for your. Is Jim here tonight? Hold on, Jim. Thanks for your question. Jim's question is: what presence can a little country of 5 million have in influencing the might of Europe? Mr. McDougall, what do you make of that one? The membership of the European Union is the objective of the stated objective of those promoting independence. What about the influence thereof, or membership thereof?
Well, I used to work in foreign policy in a previous life, and it may not be an attractive fact of life, but it is a fact of life that the European Union is run by big countries. We currently, in the decision-making body of the European Union and Council of Ministers, have 29 votes as part of the United Kingdom. That would go down to 7. Now, why is that important? If you look at things like, we're one of the few nations in Europe who have a real interest in fishing, for example. The Scottish Fishermen's Federation, not my words, Scottish Fishermen's Federation asked, why would it make sense as one of the few nations in Europe to have that interest? Would you reduce your voting capacity at the main negotiating table in the European Union from 29 down to 7? But look, we can have a debate about what it will mean for Scotland within the European Union. I think the unfortunate thing so far, with what we've heard from the Scottish Government, is that has not been based on an honest assessment of what it would mean. First of all, we had £20,000 on a court case to cover up the fact that they actually had no legal advice on the status of Scotland within the European Union while they were out there saying they did. Okay? Earlier this year, in July, when Croatia joined the European Union, Nicola Sturgeon said that they didn't have to join Schengen and they didn't have to join the Euro. We passed in Britain, as all other European countries have to do, accession act for Croatia, Article 4 of which said, and Article 4 of 5 of which said that they had to join the Euro and they had to join Schengen. Now,
Sweden is nominally obliged to join the Euro.
Sweden was a member of this.
As far as I know, they usually go.
Sweden is the example that was used. Sweden was in the European Union before the Euro existed, so it's quite a bit after that. Every other nation that has joined since then has had to join the Euro. But if the premise of the SNP and the Scottish Government argument is that we would get a better deal than every other country which has become a new member state of the EU, then that's fine. But let's be honest that there are red lines and there are benefits we have as part of a big nation within the European Union that we would
just picking up at one point, what about the influence that the UK government wields, what you call the big stick? Is the big stick any use if it's not wielded in Scotland's interest? What you're suggesting there is the interest of Scotland and the wider UK will always be coterminous, and the UK government will always go into that, to use the phrase, for Scotland. Well, that might not be the case if they don't assert it in the wider UK interest.
Well, inevitably, when you're part of a partnership with other people, there'll be an element of compromise. I think that it does matter to Scotland in, for example, fishing negotiations, that we are one of the big nations. And I know how these negotiations work in Europe. The big nations sit in a room, and then yes, the small nations have a seat around the table, but the deal has already been done.
Was the Scottish fishing fleet described as extendable at the time?
Well, I would not defend everything that we've done, but what I'm saying, what I'm saying is, surely it is better to be at the top table making the decision than being one of the countries that is ushered in at the last minute and the deal is already.
I think the question was what sort of presence do we have? Yeah. Well, I think the answer is, instead in the UK, quite likely no presence at all. because we know that the strong likelihood is we'll be faced with an in-out referendum on future membership of the European Union. And the opinion poll suggests that that might very well mean...
You expect the Conservatives to win the next UK general election?
That's against it. I mean, I don't think anyone else would it. So the next thing, when Blair made the point about the fact that Europe's run by the big nations, isn't it strange, therefore, how the most prosperous countries in the European Union are all smaller countries? And those are the countries with the greatest wealth per head of population. I mean,
to the exerting influence of the European Union.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Now, Blair made the point. I said, I mean, I'm from Elgin, from the northeast, from Murray, and I said that a lot of people out of school went into the oil industry. The ones who didn't go into the oil industry went into the fishing industry. Because a lot of people from Barkhead and Bolton were about the fishing community. About half the people in my class at school went into the fishing industry. There's none of them in the fishing industry now. The fishing industry was sold down the river. That's what happened to the fishing industry in Scotland. Now, I don't personally think that everything that the UK has done to represent British interests in Europe is bad. I mean, things are never as black and white as that. But I have absolutely no doubt that an independent Scotland would have more representation. We would have a seat at the table, but it's alluded from the key decision making now, and that's got to be.
Don't you accept that all the argument that we're doing about the clout, 29 votes to 7, the clout of the UK being.
No, where do we see this? I mean, do we see the UK government as going and securing wonderful deals? I don't think so. And I think the UK is increasingly at odds with the European Union, and that's the reason why. I mean, people around David Cameron, Michael Gove, who I know quite well, he used to work with him. Michael Gove, one of his closest cabinet colleagues, I said if he was voting now on membership of the European Union, he would vote against. And more and more people at senior positions in that party are saying they would vote against. There's every likelihood, I think people realise this, that UKIP are going to do extremely well in the European elections in England in May of next year. And I think we'll see what's already happened is both the main UK parties nudging further and further to the right to try and head off the threat from UKIP on the European Union and everything else.
Very briefly, Mr. McDougall, now out to the audience on this issue of Europe.
I always think it's strange to hear people who support Scotland leaving the UK to use the same arguments that UKIP used and then to claim that UKIP are a bad thing. We sell 4 times as much to the rest of the UK as we do to the rest of Europe. If it's a bad idea for Scotland to be outside of the European Union, it's 4 times as bad an idea for us to be outside of the United Kingdom.
Just getting back to the point on fishing, Blair McDougall, he's saying what 29 representatives in
29 votes.
29 votes, okay. Well, surely then having 7, at least on our side, would be a step up, not backwards.
I should say it's not me that's saying this, it is the Scottish Fishermen's Federation are saying they cannot see how it makes sense, and what was done, what they said was they cannot see the balance of benefit in moving from having 29 votes to 7 votes. Not me that's saying that, they're saying that.
Blair Jenkins, look at another question of Europe, please, for somebody in the audience. Blair Jenkins, yeah. Oh, no, no, there, please. No, you have. No, front row, lady there. Let's take them both together here and then here.
I would just like to ask if it's so important for us to have a seat at the top table, which is disputed actually, that where all the influence lies in the EU because of the way small nations work together in their interests. Given the recent CAP reform, having a seat at that top table, how come Scottish farmers ended up with the worst CAP compensation settlement out of any of the nations in the EU?
Thank you for that. And let's take that, hold on to that thought, and let's take our friend in the third row. Yes. Yeah.
Well, on the matter of Europe and independence, the notion that there is actually any independence for anybody in Europe is bogus, isn't it? Because all states have ceded sovereignty. So, and to suggest that it's illegitimate for the rest of the UK to discuss constitutional matters and what this type in relation to Europe is a bit perverse, isn't it?
Thanks for that.
And when it talks about the Scottish Government wants to fix alcohol, minimum pricing for alcohol. In Europe, they can't do it, so there is no independence in Europe, is there? You can't do something that's small and simple and fix the unit of price of alcohol because Brussels is telling you because of the
one point I want to pick up on, and I mean, I agree with you, is I think the notion of independence meaning you have absolutely no form of independence with any other country. I agree, it's an incredibly old-fashioned view of what it is to be an independent country. But if you went around Europe, if you talk to people in Austria or Luxembourg or Spain or Italy, you know what, you're not an independent country because you're in the European Union. I think you'd be laughed out of town. I think, but the contention that you're part of the European Union, you're not an independent country. I know it's a point of view, but I don't think it's a majority point of view around Europe.
We'll have a question from the lady in the front that said Scotland's a member of the UK, and the UK negotiated with the EU, and she's suggesting Scotland's farmers got a stinking deal as a consequence.
Well, the thing that's going on in the background to that is the fact that Britain gets a unique rebate from the European Union, which is based on the fact that we have a more productive and efficient farming sector than the rest of the European Union. Worth around, different estimates, but worth around £135 per household in Scotland. No other country in Europe has that. Now, the SNP government position at the moment is we would automatically inherit that all 20 other states would suddenly just wave us through the door and allow us to keep that. So we can have a debate about swings and roundabouts and what would be best within the European Union. There will be a price extracted from Scotland for its new membership of the European Union. And we just need to be honest about it because we've not heard what their red lines are, we've not heard what their negotiating position is. But even people like Professor Hughes Hallett, who's on the SNP's Government Fiscal Commission, which Blair Jenkins quoted from a minute ago, he said that every new country that signs up to the European Union has to sign up to join the Euro. Now that's what he said, not what I said, right? So if their position is that they're going to sign up but not join, then let's talk about it.
The UK government's own legal advisors on European Union issues said that the 18-month timetable between Scotland voting yes and actually becoming an independent country was more than adequate for a perfectly reasonable space of time in which to negotiate the term.
But what about the argument that price extracted Scotland?
But we get
this is part of, there are very easy ways to establish what Scotland's position would be in the European Union if we go yes, and that would be for the UK, and only the UK government can do it, to formally ask the EU what would be the position. So there are all these areas, currency is another, where it suits the No campaign to try and maintain as much uncertainty as possible, but they are the gatekeepers, they are the blockage to giving people certainty as to what would happen. There are issues, and I absolutely accept that the precise terms and conditions of EU membership, which would be continuing membership, it would never be continuing membership. The precise terms and conditions, you have to go on the basis of probability and just your experience of human nature. If we all woke up every morning thinking the rest of the world was out to get us, we'd never leave home, It's, I think, and there's been lots of comments around here about how welcome an independent Scotland would be in Europe, and I've absolutely no doubt whatsoever that we would join a very welcoming and very receptive Europe.
Do you think we'd have a rebate?
Well, the terms and conditions themselves, it's quite possible we would do it. If you think of what you think of what we bring, you think of what we bring to the European Union. We are the European Union's biggest oil producer, the biggest shore of offshore tidal energy. There are lots and lots of things that we bring to the European Union. Well, whiskey, I think, by the boat, absolutely.
I'm going to move on. Thank you for that. It's a horrendous debate so far. Let's keep it going. One area that is not, one debate that is not taking place, if you like. The next question comes from Emma Fado. Have I got the right pronunciation? Is Emma here? Never mind. Anyway, second question, Emma Fado asks, does David Cameron's refusal to engage with a live TV debate with Alex Salmond not completely undermine the Better Together campaign by showing lack of respect for a prospective Prime Ministerial peer?
I assume the question is to me.
Why won't David Cameron debate with Alex?
If I'm honest, I don't get up in the morning and worry whether Alex Salmond's ego has been damaged. It's not what drives me on a day-to-day basis. Look, the slogan, the basis, the philosophy of the entire Yes campaign that Alex Salmond is leading is Scotland's future in Scotland's hands. Okay, he cannot have it both ways. Okay, our side gets to decide who debates for us. Their side gets to decide who debates for them. But this is a decision for Scots to take in the referendum next year. And
but if that is the case, and the Prime Minister will not engage in a debate, should he be engaging in the controversy at all? Should he
Well, he is Prime Minister of the entire United Kingdom. He is entitled to get into this debate. But look, there's a reason, and people aren't stupid, they can see what's going on. There's a reason why Alex Salmond is so desperate to to debate with David Cameron. Because he doesn't want this to be about us as Scots deciding what's best for us. He wants it to be a fight between him and an Englishman. That's what he wants. Why would he be so desperate to debate?
Blair Jenkins. You know your chance in a minute. Blair Jenkins.
I think what I want to say is I think there's a white theme running through the independence debate this autumn. We're about to get the white paper from the Scottish Government setting out its vision for an independent Scotland. We have white space from the No campaign in terms of their vision for the future of Scotland, and we have the white flag from David Cameron in terms of their vision for Scotland. My view is, I think, and this is honestly, I have a lot of experience in broadcasting, I think this might change. I actually think David Cameron, if we get nearer to the vote, when he thinks he's going to be the Prime Minister who does preside over Scotland, even the UK, will think it's not terribly wise in terms of the future of the politician in the rest of the UK to have gone through that process without debating the issues with the First Minister of Scotland. I think that might be quite a pragmatic decision near the time of the referendum.
Why are you so adamantly supporting it? There's a point where he says that this debate, however, is influenced by voices off it, if you like, but this debate should take place in Scotland among those who are voting in the referendum.
Well, Brian, okay, I'm not going to put you in the spot here, but we both worked a long time in broadcasting and television. Everybody knows the debate people want to see is Alex Salmond and David Cameron. That's absolutely true. If you're a broadcaster, and if I was in any of my old jobs, running news at BBC Scotland, running news at STV, you would think, what can I do to get Alex Salmond and David Cameron in the same studio? Because that is a debate that people want to see. Now, at the end of the day, and I'll be absolutely honest, it doesn't matter terribly much to me if, frankly, who's debating for the no side. We have the better arguments, we have the evidence with the better arguments, we have the better people, so I don't care, frankly, who's debating.
Next to debate David Cameron because he's seen as English and in that case perhaps somehow remote from the concerns of Scotland.
No, I think I do think the nationality point is another one. I mean, it seems to be perfectly obvious, and to be honest, if you look at the commentary that's appearing in the overseas press, which is all a good place to be because it's an external perspective, we'll see far more people in the overseas newspaper who've reported this who do actually express surprise that the Prime Minister of the UK does not want to engage in a broadcast debate with the First Minister of Scotland. So I think that external perspective is something that's quite useful once we get from Ross and very close to the debate. But as I say, and I'll come back next year and apologise if I'm wrong. I think let's just wait and see whether or not David Cameron debates with Alex Salmond. I wouldn't rule that out.
Thank you very much. You think it's unlikely that it will?
We'll put a bet on now.
How much? Go on, why
£100 to the charity of your choice if it happens, but it will not happen.
And €100 for me, so no.
I'll take that bet because even if I lose that one, I'm winning the main bet.
Let's get some questions on that. Jennifer over there, please, in the second row.
Sorry, we get towards the end. I just wanted to make a comment from you. Just about the opening remarks from Blair McDougall. I've sat through, I'm English as you can tell, I've sat through sort of 3 years of hearing people talk about the referendum. I've listened to lots of Labour politicians.
But even, try fapping.
And they all talk about social democracy, and they all talk about it as though they believe in it. But they don't seem to notice that the party they belong to ceased to be a social democratic party a long, long time ago, and is now just a pale interest.
Broadening out, but are we done with the issue of the debate? Does anybody want to make a comment on the debate, sir? Yeah, please, there we go.
I think one of the first things which David Cameron said when the whole campaign started, he would strain every sinew to keep the UK intact. He seems to be straining more than a few sinews at the moment, wriggling out of any attempt to have a debate with Alex Salmond. I could understand if he was keeping out of the debate altogether, but in fact he is marshalling he's marshalling the No campaign from Westminster, but refusing to debate with Alex Salmond, either in Scotland or anywhere else.
On that same day, Alex Salmond said he should butt out, so he cannot have it both ways. On your point, look, I am proud that I'm a member of a party where my leader at the moment is talking about re-regulating the energy market so that we pay more bills, and not so that we pay for more energy costs out of our pockets. I'm proud that he is putting a tax onto the payday loan companies to pay for cheaper credit from credit unions. I'm proud that he's talking about taking on the zero-hour contracts issue. I'm proud that in his conference speech he devoted so much time talking about not just the minimum wage, but a living wage. But look, if we want to hold these two offers up against each other, I take you back to the fact that the proposition we are voting for next year, the only tax policy we have from our government that we're supposed to be voting on in September, is a 3% cut for the multinational companies that operate in this country. If you are on benefits, if you are relying on tax credits, you have no detail as to what's going to happen. If you're generating Scotland, you know exactly what's going to happen.
Jenkins. Well, a final point on the debate. Yeah, a final point on the broadcasting debate. I mean, I think, and I say this with all respect, I mean, when it comes to Project Fear, Blair McDougall is only actually in Scotland running the distribution centre. We know the Fear factory is in London. That's good material. The guy who runs that factory should have the courage and the convictions and get out and debate. That's it.
Can I just say, I started this debate by saying that I thought Blair Jenkins and I both started from the same position, which was that we both loved our country, we just had different views about what we should do with it. And this nonsense about people who think we should stay in the United Kingdom taking our orders from people down in England is just offensive. We do it because we think it's...
I didn't say that. What I'm saying is that the arguments, the case that has been made to the union, that all the documents, all the material that's being produced, is being produced in London, it's being produced in Whitehall by UK government department. That's where there are thousands. That's the Fear factory. That is the Fear factory, and they're producing the material.
They're giving us facts, unlike you.
Why are Scottish taxpayers having to pay for that?
Let's we've got about 10 minutes for generic questions. A general question. Close our hands. Way at the back if you could, because all the way up to the very, very back.
Sorry, a question about sort of shared resources in regards to funding and higher education funding. Sitting in Dundee, which is a university which is a very important role in scientific research and funding within the UK, I just want to know how an independent Scotland would fund such research grants that we maybe share with the UK and how that would mean for higher education in Scotland.
And this has been raised quite recently by, I think it was the Vice Principal of St Andrews. But first of all.
I don't know if anyone saw the education debate that Newsnight Scotland ran the other night, because this issue was raised. We get far beyond our population share of UK research funding grants, particularly in places with life science clusters like around this university. When this was put to him, Mike Russell's response was that we would have a system like happens in the Scandinavian countries. Now, there is a shared research grant running across those countries. It is £13 million. Okay? There is one project alone at this university in Dundee looking at pharmaceutical drug development on Parkinson's, on cancer and other illnesses that is £14 million. In the latest figures, Scottish universities have got about £257 million from UK research grants. Now, the Scottish Government can claim that they will fill that gap, but to say that we can continue to get taxpayers' money from the rest of the UK after we stop paying into the UK tax pot is just ridiculous. And it risks one of the things that we are really, really good at in Scotland, which is scientific innovation, invention and discovery. It's what we bring to the UK table. But it's taxpayers' money that is paid for by taxpayers in the rest of the UK. It doesn't go to Ireland, doesn't go to other countries. It is very funded.
Last month, the principal of the university, so right where you're sitting now, said the biggest threat in the university sector in Scotland was the British government's immigration policy.
Some of the guys being covered. I mean, research grants are here in merit, and more of them are coming at the European level rather than at the UK level. I talk to university principals, and they say that's not the area that is of primary concern to them. It's research grants. They think that will be okay. their main concern, what the benefit they see from an independent Scotland, is actually, and the gentleman alluded to it, is being able to relax some of the more ridiculous and strict restrictions on overseas students coming here. This is an area where Scottish universities, which are excellent universities, including this one, can grow their businesses, help to grow our economy, bring people here and help to stimulate higher education in this country. I think the other thing I would say, and I'm sure there'll be more on this in the white paper, I think the record of support for higher education in Scotland is a much prouder record than the record of the UK government in respect of England and Wales. I think there's not much knowledge in Scotland of just how badly higher education in England has been affected by tuition fees and by the debt that are being incurred by students south of the border. So I'm very proud of that.
Thanks for that. I got so carried away taking the audience questions. I forgot one key little element, one key element of the entire thing, which is to allow the participants to cross-question each other with a quite advancement. I'm going straight to that. I think we said Blair Jenkins first. Blair, you want to ask Blair a question?
Yeah, okay. There does now seem to be widespread agreement that an independent Scotland would be a successful and prosperous country. No one has disputed that. Against that background, armed with that knowledge, why would people in Scotland continue to endure Tory governments that we didn't vote for and have David Cameron and George Osborne running economic policy in Scotland with an austerity agenda and a privatisation agenda, and also running welfare policy in Scotland with benefit cuts and the bedroom tax? Why should we put up with that?
Well, I have spent my entire political life campaigning for Labour governments, both in Scotland and in the UK, and that's what I'll continue to campaign for. And it might not have escaped your notice, but at the last general election, after the end of the longest period of Labour government in British political history, the Conservatives did not win the election. It was a hung parliament, okay? The idea, this suggestion that somehow the rest of the UK is populated by right-wing extremists does not bear scrutiny whatsoever. But if those governments in London are so bad, why on earth would we want them still to be controlling our budgets through our currency union? Why on earth would we want them to be controlling our banks? It's not a credible position.
Well, I think there's a point to being. Why we could have, I'm not in any political party. In the UK we have alternating Labour and Conservative government. Journalistically, in an independent Scotland, likely we'd have alternating Labour and SNP government. And that sounds like a better deal to me, to be honest.
Labour government in Westminster, and I want a Labour government at Holyrood. I think
what's your second choice after a Labour government at Westminster?
Parliament would be my second choice.
Who would be the Prime Minister in that Parliament?
Would be Ed Miliband in that Parliament. Look, if I thought we would have better choices, I would do that. But look, believing in Scotland is not enough. We've got to look at the economics. And this week we had two reports, separately, people with no political access to grind, pointing out that inevitably, because of the additional fiscal challenges an independent Scotland face, we would end up cutting into benefits and cutting into pensions because there was nowhere else to go.
Blair McDougall, your question now to Blair Jenkins.
I suppose my question is linked to that. If we believe the offer that's being put to us, we will keep the BBC, which will remain based in London. We will have a currency union, which will mean that banks are still regulated in London. We will keep an element of control over our budgets in London because they'll have to sign off the budgets as part of the fiscal pact and the currency union, and we'll share all these other things. I guess my question is, if we are going to share all these things, surely it's better that we send elected representatives to speak up for Scotland than to send diplomats to foreign countries.
I think I come back to my earlier point, because the key thing here is about where the political decisions are taken that affect our lives. And all the evidence is that people in Scotland want decisions that affect their lives, the key decisions on taxation, on welfare, the key decisions on every aspect that affects their life, taken in Scotland and not taken at Westminster.
Now, do you know currency interest rates?
As an independent country, of course there are areas where, there are lots of areas where you would cooperate with the rest of the UK, where it makes sense. But the most important thing is we make those decisions. So yes, there would be a high degree of cooperation, I'm sure, on the highly beneficial trade that goes both ways between the two countries. But But you know, the price is the price for the price of one of the prices for staying in the UK is the fact that we have weapons of mass destruction on the decline. So why should we? What we don't need to do? Why should we endure all the things we have to endure as part of the UK when we don't need to? We're a perfect, successful, independent country, and there's no prospect. There is no prospect of changing Westminster on any of these issues.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Forward. Just let me closing remarks from Blair Jenkins. Perhaps summing up what we've discussed tonight. It's been a tremendous debate, really excellent. Let me go first. A few closing remarks, Blair Jenkins.
I think the most important thing about tonight is that everyone is engaging in this debate. This is the single most important moment in Scottish political history. It's the biggest decision we will ever make. And when we make that decision, there will be no going back. We need to be 100% certain that the decision we are making is the right decision. And I'll go back to that point I made at the very beginning. Blair Jenkins just said it himself. This notion, this absolute notion, that the only decisions that are right for Scotland are decisions that we take on our own, clearly is not an absolute decision. There are things we can work together on, and there are things we should work together on because it's in our best interest to do so. We can have the best things about being a small country with our own devolved parliament, and we can keep the best things about being a bigger, stronger, one of the largest economies in the world. We do not have to make that choice between black and white.
Yeah, one of the interesting things I've sometimes wondered is a lot of people in the room will remember the devolution referendum in 1997 and the start of the new parliament in 1999. So we really were at the dawn of the new century, and we had that debate about devolution. You just imagine for a moment that had been a debate about independence, and the arguments on the other side would have been too risky, too dangerous, we're taking a hell of a chance by going independent, stick here and be much, much safer. Then look at what happened in the next 10 years. Let's look at what happened as being part of the UK. We got involved in an illegal war in Iraq with all the consequent death, destruction, and a huge sum of money. I think the calculation was across Scotland, £600 million to be part of that adventure. We had our economy brought to the brink of catastrophe and collapse within the UK in that period of time. And now we're going through a period where there is the most fundamental, unprecedented assault on the welfare state in this country. So all the things you've been told then, you've been told the same things then as you're being told now. Don't take the chance, take it safer. It wasn't true, it would have been true then, it's certainly not true now. There are three categories of people in the audience, I guess. I would say to people who've already decided to vote yes, good choice. Important thing, keep talking to people, keep having conversations. The way we win this referendum is by having conversations and talking to people. The people who at this stage think they're going to vote no, what I would say is, I absolutely respect your point of view. All I'd ask is keep an open mind as much as you can, listen to the debate, there's a long way to go, pay close attention to the white paper, pay close attention to the debate, and I hope, and I will certainly be trying to persuade you to vote yes over the next 10, 11 months. And in a sense, maybe in some ways the most important category of people in the room, the people who have not yet made up their mind. I'll go back to what I said at the start because it is the most important thing. If you go through, I can't ask you to do any more than go through an honest process of really looking at what kind of country you want to live in and what matters to you, and then really look at which result next year is most likely to produce the kind of country you want, the kind of Scotland you want. And if you go through that process, then whatever decision you arrive at is right for you. But I believe that most people who go through that process will end up voting yes.